I've been to some dark places personally, but I don't know. I don't really feel like it's been religion that has pulled me out of that. I feel like it's just been like my own self, like, you know, realizations, which is like, if people need that, great. You know what I mean? Great. More power to them. Like, I wish I could be like Habib, what I mean?
What's a realization that brought you to a dark place, or realization that pulled you out of one? Either way.
I mean, I've told you before, like, just being a brown kid in the South Bronx, there's not a lot of, like, you feel like there's not a lot of options for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of your friends kind of going down the route of, like, shootouts, gang violence, prison, you know what I mean? Just that seems to be the consistent thing between, like, poor minorities of particularly Puerto Ricans and African Americans, and there are other groups too, but that seems to be constant. I think besides Muay Thai pulling me from that place, I think I just had a realization that, like, I don't want that. You know what I mean? As much as religion can help people, I feel like there's also a big self moment that you have to have, regardless of religion or anything that you believe. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to pin, like, me getting out of a dark place just on some, like, it doesn't always have to be some, like, being outside that descended upon me with its light for me to get out of that dark place. It just kind of just came from, like, within to be like, nah, I don't want that, and I feel like that's hard to do, but yeah.
So seeing a lot of your friends or people you knew in your neighborhood go down a path, whether it's violence or prison, that cultivated some sense of within of you not wanting to be in that same place.
Yeah, no, definitely. Also, I did want to talk to you about this on the podcast because I thought it would be a good topic.
Yeah, for sure.
When I was a kid, funnily enough, I can't even speak English. Is that CTE acting up right now? That's what it is.
Live CTE. CTE. Ad for CTE.
CTE. Yeah, when I was a kid, the SWAT team busted into my home, and I was in the shower with my mom. I was a baby, and my mom was giving me a bath, and my father, I told you, went to prison, and that is a big moment for me.
So you vividly remembered. Yeah. How old were you?
I was really little. I was maybe one or two. But I remember my mom had me with both her hands. She was dipping me inside the bathtub, and we just heard a big ba-doom on the door, and then I see my mom open the bathroom door, and I see my dad fighting the SWAT officers, and to this day he still has, like, a scar on his head from getting to the end of his head because he assaulted one of the officers. But yeah, that was a big moment for me, and that's like one of my first memories as a kid.
That's a fucked up first memory to have. I think my first memory, I was like drinking fucking milk or something from. But no, that's something I wanted to get into because we come from two different places. I grew up in the toughest neighborhood on the planet, Plainview, Long Island, the whitest most Jewish neighborhood you could you could ever think of, and there's a privilege in that aspect of being able to control how I want violence to come in or come out of my life in that aspect where if I wanted to get in a fight as a kid, I could decide if I wanted to do that. And I did it maybe twice. But if I didn't want violence as a part of my life, no one was ever going to come knocking to do it. Or no one was ever going to, like, mug me on the street. Or no one was ever going to, like, I never saw a gun until I was like 19, 20. I saw them on TV, never really got in fights. Like, I didn't understand. And I still don't fully understand because I never lived it. So I'm only hearing about it from other people who grew up in rougher neighborhoods. But that's something I wanted to get into with you of like the mentality of growing up in a neighborhood where you can't separate yourself from violence or, people want to beat the fuck out of you or weapons and shit like that.
It's rough. it's rough. I don't want to make a big, like, disparity between me and you to be like, oh, you can't understand. I think you could if you just look long enough, you know what I mean? You'll see.
I could understand at at some level, at a deeper level. I don't think I'll ever be able to understand it at the depth of someone who grew up in that type of neighborhood, because there's one thing, just like you'll never be able to fully understand what it's like to grow up in a white Jewish neighborhood. Like all this shit that goes on where I'm just like, that's like the typical like Long Island thing. Like, so, but yeah, like could you speak a little bit about what it was like navigating that element of growing up in the Bronx and being in situations where it was just part of growing up in the area, whether it was like violent or people trying to fuck you up, and because violence came into your life before you allowed it, which was not the same with me.
Yeah. First time I saw a gun, I was like 11 or 12, and someone gave me a gun. It was my grandfather. I freaked out, gave it to my mom. I was also just like a kid who didn't want to be involved in that kind of stuff. So, I don't know why that was the case, and I think Muay Thai for sure, boxing for sure kept me away from that kind of stuff, but I definitely got entangled with it somehow. More than anything, I think it's a mentality that if you don't grow up with, it's hard to get, Like I think from the outside looking in, people see like, what's wrong with these neighborhoods? How come there's all this and that going on? How come you see that cracked out dude at the MTA train station, just sitting there yelling at everyone? But there are like societal reasons for why that's the case, and the difference is between like, say, a neighborhood like where maybe you would have grown up or versus where I would have grown up is that like those people that are in the train station live in my neighborhood, and I definitely think, I don't want to get too deep into like history and all that stuff like that, but definitely, slavery plays a part, of things. And just the effects that people haven't answered from those things. Not to make excuses for anyone, but I think the hardest thing about those environments is just remembering to check your ego. That will keep you alive most of the time, because even though I can fight really well, I am. I'm not afraid to admit that like there are plenty of times in my life growing up in those environments where I had to be like, yeah, I'm going to back down from that situation because I don't see the good outcome. And then even in an environment like New York, if a dude assaults me, pulls out a knife, come attacks me, and I smoke him with like a hook cross, you know what I mean? And a low kick, I still got to go to jail because this psychopath that you couldn't protect me from assaulted me. And that's the reality in a lot of these neighborhoods for kids, is like, even if you defend yourself, you're going to jail too. And, that's like I said, ego checking was the biggest way for me to navigate through it.